The Los Angeles Chargers finished the 2024 season with an 11-6 record and made the playoffs for the second time in 3 years. And unfortunately for the Chargers, they lost in the wildcard round in a very embarrassing way. This loss was different from the 2022 postseason loss, as in 2022 they infamously blew a 27-point lead to the Jaguars, while this time around they were blown out by 20 points in a game where their quarterback threw 4 interceptions. And to make matters worse, Justin Herbert had a really efficient 2024 regular season, as he had the lowest interception percentage of any quarterback in the NFL last year, as he threw just 3 interceptions on over 500 regular season passing attempts, yet threw 4 in one postseason game. It was a very long afternoon and offseason for the Chargers because Justin Herbert has shown incredibly high highs throughout his career, yet has 2 very bad postseason losses on his resume, all without a first career playoff win. And that's going to be the lingering question all throughout the regular season. We know the Chargers are going to be a good team. We know Jim Harbaugh is going to have his guys ready to play. But how will they play? Not just Justin Herbert, but the entire team play when it matters. Well, to put it lightly, they will be an incredibly difficult team to beat. And we're going to break everything down with the 2025 Chargers in today's video. If you could like the video before we start, I would really appreciate it, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing what the Chargers did in free agency during the 2025 offseason. If you know anything about a Jim Harbaugh team, well, usually they are a representation of who he is as a coach. A tough, hard-nosed guy that wants to punch you in the mouth and continue to punch you in the mouth as they are on their way to handing your team a loss. And despite the 2024 Chargers season having a lot of positive moments, like with Joe Alt or Ladd McConkey or even the rookie DBs in Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart, there were weaknesses within the Chargers team, and the interior offensive line was a big one. It's no coincidence they went out and signed Mekhi Becton to a 2-year, $20 million deal after having a good year with the Eagles, in which he not only resurrected his career, but also became a Super Bowl champion. And I like this signing for the Chargers because it was really low risk, as they only guaranteed Mekhi about 7 of the $20 million he signed for, and he is still just 26 years old. So there is a real reality where Mekhi Becton can build off of the year he had in 2024 and stay in Los Angeles for the next handful of years. And I love signings like this because of the relatively low risk compared to the high reward that's there for them, if it works out. They also brought in Najee Harris from the Steelers, and I know people have their opinions on running back Najee Harris, specifically that he's not elite, and that they also drafted Omarion Hampton in the first round of the 2025 draft, but Najee has ran for 1,000 yards in 4 straight seasons, and I do think he helps raise the floor of the Chargers running back room in 2025. Now, I do think Omarion will receive the majority of the carries, and rightfully so, but having a 1-2 punch of Hampton and Najee Harris is going to be downright exhausting for defenses to have to go up against for 4 straight quarters. And the one continuous message we will hammer home in today's video is, who has it better than us? And kidding, of course. The message is that the Chargers are going to be an extremely difficult team to beat because they will not give up, ever. They also brought back receiver Mike Williams and brought in tight end Tyler Conklin, and I do think Conklin is a bit underrated, and I really like that signing for them. Now, there are a couple of players the Chargers will have to replace on defense entering 2025, and they are Joey Bosa, Christian Fulton, and Poona Ford, to name a few. Christian Fulton played over 750 snaps for the Chargers last year and was a solid 1-year player for them. He signed a 2-year, $20 million deal with the Chiefs this offseason, which was a huge payday for him after having a year contract with the Bolts for a little over $3 million in 2024. Losing Poona Ford in free agency was tough because Poona had a great year with the Chargers last year, and to me was the embodiment of a Jim Harbaugh coached player. A tough, hard-nosed guy that's going to do the dirty work. And Poona had a lot of juice in the middle of the defense, and that was something that was missing for the Chargers defense over the previous couple of years, and I was kind of surprised LA let him walk for $15 million guaranteed. They also let Joey Bosa and Josh Palmer go, as both players signed with Buffalo, and I know there were obviously great times with Joey Bosa as a Charger, but I do think it was time to move on for both sides. Bosa had played in just 28 of 51 games over the last 3 years, and I am a really big fan of Tuli Tuipulotu, and think they can get very similar production from him in 2025 that they would have from Joey Bosa, if not more, for a fraction of the cost, which is the biggest thing for the Chargers. Now, with Ladd McConkey, Trey Harris in the second round, and a now or never year for Quentin Johnston, I don't think losing Josh Palmer in free agency is going to be the end of the world for this offense either. Now, with the Chargers defense, this is a very good unit as they are led by one of the brightest defensive minds we have in our game in Jesse Minter. I could very easily see Jesse Minter becoming an NFL head coach at some point, and in his first year as the DC of the Chargers, well, they rank first in points allowed per game, fourth in net yards per passing attempt, fifth in defensive passing DVOA, and were sixth in EPA per play. They are a very good unit, and another reason why I'm optimistic about the Chargers this year is last year was their first year under Jesse Minter, and they were a very, very good unit. I can't help but think the continuity within this defense and year two under this coaching staff will only help everyone grow together. Nobody would have thought heading into the year that both Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart would have the roles they did in year one, and especially Tarheeb Still. Derwin James was a second-team All-Pro for the second time in 3 years, and this unit has playmakers at every level. Dion Henley took a step last year, and while Junior Colson had limited playing time during his rookie season, I really like his potential in this defense, and if everything goes according to plan, then there is a very real reality where Henley and Colson are one of the better linebacking duos by season's end. And we all know how the Chargers season ended last year, but I'm not giving up on this team or just saying that, oh, well, shucks, we have Patrick Mahomes in our division and Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and CJ Stroud in our conference, so we're never going to beat those guys. The Chargers are without a doubt one of the best coached teams in the entire NFL, and I also think it's worth noting Navarro Bowman, yes, that Navarro Bowman, is the team's linebacking coach, and I don't say this about every team, but I do think if there is going to be a team that truly maximizes what they get out of their players, it's going to be the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't think Khalil Mack and Tuli Tuipulotu are going to be the best edge rushing duo in the league, but I do think they're going to be more than good enough. And not only that, but I also really like the landing spot for South Carolina's Kyle Kennard, who is the Chargers' 4th round pick. We'll discuss Kennard more during the rookie portion of the video, and I know we discussed the loss of Poona Ford, but I cannot emphasize enough how much I love the selection of Jamari Caldwell, the nose tackle from Oregon. I think the Chargers had 2 bad games last year, and one was unfortunately in the playoffs for everyone to see against Houston, but the other was against the Bucs a few weeks prior. And the point is, I don't think 1 or 2 games should completely summarize how you feel about a team heading into the following season. And again, the 2024 Chargers led the NFL in points per game allowed, which was not a coincidence. And with the Chargers specifically, who do you think is the worst player on this defense? Who do you think teams are going to look at all week and circle and say, we are going to go after this guy on Sunday and take his will away from him in the process? And that's kind of the point. Nobody on this Chargers defense is that bad to the point where you say, man, I don't know how they're going to get around this because he is that much of a weak link. I would be very surprised if this team falls out of the top 10 in points per game allowed, and they're becoming a tougher, more Jim Harbaugh type team by the year. And when you are going up against a defense that has guys like Derwin James, Dion Henley, Khalil Mack, and Tarheeb Still, that's coached by Jesse Minter, good luck. This team is going to maximize what they have out of their players and try to punch you in the mouth in the process. Their goal is to play physical football, and when you look at their front seven, I think this team is going to be even better than what they were last year. They may drop a few spots in rankings here and there, but truly, what weak spot are you attacking against the 2025 Chargers defense? One of the biggest reasons that I'm pretty high on the 2025 Chargers is because of the changes they've made in the draft over the past 2 years. You saw it last year by having guys like Joe Alt, Ladd McConkey, Tarheeb Still, Cam Hart, and I think Junior Colson will take that step this year, but it was emphasized even more in 2025. And when we talk about the Jim Harbaugh guys, the really tough, punch you in the mouth and keep going type players, honestly, in some ways very similar to Dan Campbell, where, we can get knocked down, but we're going to stand back up, and we might even take a huck out of a kneecap on the way back up, very much also applies to Jim Harbaugh. And Omarion Hampton at the running back position is kind of the perfect representation of that. And he didn't just average over 4.2 yards per carry in 2023 and 2024 with UNC. He averaged over 4.2 yards after contact in each of the last 2 years. He's coming off of back-to-back 1,500 plus yard double-digit seasons with the Tar Heels, and I think he's going to be a player that Chargers fans love early and often. I really think there's a reality where he's not just a one-time, but a multiple-time Pro Bowl player, and we often talk about setting guys up for success and usually refer to Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but this is a situation that's not far off of that from the running back position because you're going to have Rashawn Slater, Mekhi Becton, and Joe Alt all in front of you along the offensive line, but even if teams want to really gear up to stop the run, well, they can't exactly do that because of who he has at quarterback in Justin Herbert. I think there's a very real chance that Omarion Hampton wins the Rookie of the Year, although if I am being completely honest, I think there's going to be far more opportunity for Ashton Jeanty in Vegas meaning he's going to have a lot more carries than Omarion Hampton, but I wouldn't be surprised if Hampton did. And for what it's worth, those are my top two guys to win the 2025 Offensive Rookie of the Year. With the second-round receiver Tre Harris, we have to talk about reasonable expectations, as I don't think it's very reasonable for him to come in and have the type of year that Ladd McConkey had last year. But when you look at the 2025 Chargers receiving core, outside of Ladd, of course, and it's guys like Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis, Mike Williams, who is not the same Mike Williams that he was 4 or 5 years ago, and even another draftee in Keandre Lambert-Smith, or even Jerry Rice's son in Brendan Rice, is it really unreasonable for Tre Harris to come in and definitively win the number 2 job and come in and have 50 or 60 receptions in his rookie season with anywhere from 550 to 700 receiving yards, along with 5 or 6 touchdowns? And to me, I think the answer is no. I think that's very reasonable for him to have in 2025. What also has to be remembered is Tre Harris is 6'2", 6'3", 210 pounds, and he's going to complement Ladd McConkey, who is, as we know, a short, scrappy gym rat, coach's son, lunch pail, really comes in and works hard, and he's going to be that shorter receiver. And when we talk about building receiving rooms, you really want to build them like a basketball team where you have a guy like Ladd, and then you have a guy like Tre Harris that can play outside and be that big-bodied contested catch guy down the sideline, and he was a contested catch guy for Ole Miss last year. As per PFF, he caught 8 of 13 contested balls, which is better than 50%, and ultimately that's a good percentage, is 50%, and to go above 50%, well, that's doing above average, and that is why Tre Harris was selected in the second round of the NFL draft, rather than being a day 3 guy or a UDFA guy. So for him specifically this year, I think he has a considerably high floor, because I don't think the Chargers receiving room, again, outside of Ladd McConkey, is all that good. And I think there's a very real reality where the 2025 Chargers have an Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate in Omarion Hampton, and a receiver that comes in and has a pretty high floor in Tre Harris, and we could be looking at a 1,000-yard running back, as well as a 600-yard receiver from the 2025 class alone. The Chargers lost Poona Ford in free agency, and they selected Oregon nose tackle Jamari Caldwell in the 3rd round at pick 86, and I personally had Jamari Caldwell at player 87 on my top 150 big board, and I thought this was obviously really good value for where he was selected. But whenever you lose a player like Poona Ford, a very hyper-specific role player, you are going to have to inevitably replace that role player, and I thought they more than did that with the selection of Jamari Caldwell. Jamari Caldwell will never be a 60 or 70 tackle player. He's not going to be a 7 or 8 sack player. But with the emphasis on offenses running the football that we saw all throughout the 2024 season, he's going to be a guy in run situations where we're going to stick him in the middle of the defense, and we are going to force offenses to either immediately place 2 bodies on him or try and run the other direction, because if they run right at him, well, you're not going to get past Jamari Caldwell in the run game. He is a fire hydrant at defensive tackle, and to me, again, as cliche as this is, a very Jim Harbaugh type selection, because he's big, he's physical, he's tough, and he's going to know what his role is, and he's going to do a damn good job within that role of the defense. Kyle Kennard was the Chargers' 4th round selection, and they selected him with pick 125. I personally had Kennard at player 92 on my big board, so credit the Chargers for drafting 4 players in the top 100 of my top 150 and ultimately top 92 of my 150, and I think Kennard's going to be a really good, unique DPR guy early in his career, a designated pass rusher where it wouldn't surprise me at all if he has a 5 or 6 sack rookie season in pretty limited playing time. He's going to be that 3rd guy behind Khalil Mack and Tuli Pelotu, and I think Jesse Minter is going to have a clear, definitive role carved out for him early on. I did have some concern with Kennard in the run game, so I wouldn't want him out there in early down situations, but there is a reason they still have Khalil Mack on the roster, and it's not just because he's a good pass rusher, it's because Khalil Mack is also good against the run at this point in his career, and he knows how to read a run game better than a rookie Kyle Kennard would. So Kyle Kennard will be a role player early on, and again, I think he's going to enter a very favorable situation for him to personally succeed in 2025. I think it is worth talking about Oronde Gadsden, the tight end from Syracuse, and I know there's been a lot of talk about Gadsden so far, as he lives really close to the facility and he's been there every morning at 5 a.m., and I think that's really good, although I don't know how much impact he's going to have early on, but I know Chargers fans are really excited about him, but I wouldn't expect too much from him, at least in the early part of the year. If he proves me wrong, I'd be the first to admit that I'm wrong, and I'd be happy for him, but he is definitely a player that Chargers fans are getting excited for, and rightfully so, by the way. Anytime I have a rookie in my team that you're reading all about the hard work and how they are doing things the right way, I'm all for buying in with that player. I just don't think he's going to have all that much impact early on, although I think it is worth noting for the role that he will eventually have in the offense will be far more a big receiver than a true inline tight end. The 2025 Chargers offense. I'll just go ahead and address the elephant in the room. Yes, I'm wearing a Justin Herbert jersey. I am a very big Justin Herbert fan. He was the first non-Vikings jersey that I ever purchased in my life. For anyone who may not know, I am a Vikings fan. I did purchase a second non-Vikings jersey during the 24 season. We will wear that player's jersey when that team comes, although that will be later in the team preview series. But Justin Herbert in 2024 was a very, very good player. Now, obviously, whenever you have guys seasons like Lamar Jackson's 41-4, Josh Allen's MVP season, Joe Burrow throwing for 43 touchdowns last year, Herbert is not going to get the love that other guys get, and especially when he's not even in a first-place team in his division because the Chiefs go 15-2. But there were so many times during the 2024 season where the Chargers basically said, Justin, we need you here, make a play, and more often than not, Justin Herbert made a play. Now, I know there are a lot of people on social media that love to criticize Justin Herbert. They love to call him if man, and I know there's also a big portion of Justin Herbert's fans, I'm not one of them, but there's a lot of people that like to say, well, if Justin Herbert was the quarterback of the Eagles, he would have multiple Super Bowl rings, and compare him to another 2020 quarterback in Jalen Hurts. I'm not getting into that discussion. I'm just kind of talking about where the Justin Herbert fan base can be at times. But Justin Herbert is, to me, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and I'll conservatively say top 8, although I do think he is a little better than top 8, but his arm talent is on another level at times. There's not many players in today's NFL that can deliver passes the way Justin can under pressure, and there was one particular play against the Chiefs where a defensive lineman cleared the chip and drilled Justin Herbert, and he found Ladd McConkey in the back of the end zone to take the lead against the Chiefs early in the game. And those were the types of plays that Justin made time after time after time in 2024 that he will probably continue to in 2025. And again, his stats last year weren't the best, as he only threw 23 touchdowns over the course of the 2024 season, but he was asked routinely by the Chargers coaching staff to bail them out of situations, because what has to be remembered with the 2024 Chargers offense is outside of Ladd McConkey and of course Justin Herbert and then the two bookend tackles in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, this offense was not all that talented. Now, it wasn't bad, and J.K. Dobbins certainly had his games, but it wasn't an elite offense where you look at this and say, man, how did the Chargers fail the way they did at the end of the 24 season? Now, Justin himself obviously played very bad within the playoff game against Houston, but this overall was not a good unit, and for the Chargers to finish 11th in points per game last year and to be in the upper half of several offensive metrics like DVOA and like EPA, and specifically to be 7th in DVA per passing play in 2024 speaks volumes to the player that Justin Herbert is on a week-by-week basis. The 2024 Chargers finished 17th in rushing DVOA, and I think it's going to be a priority for them to finish top 12 or top 13 in 2025 to really improve in that category, and I think Mekhi Becton will certainly play a part within that, as we know the Chargers' interior offensive line was not great last year. I also think they're going to try and take an idea from Detroit, where they really balance the load out between the backs between Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton, and there was a reason that the Lions' backs, more often than not, looked fresh down the stretch of the season. Now, I know David Montgomery missed a couple of games, but these backs were great all year long. You did not see a drop-off between week 1 with Jahmyr Gibbs and week 18 in the divisional round of the playoffs. Now, I'm not getting into the fact that Detroit lost and was one and done in the playoffs, but more of the concept of how they balanced the usage of each back during the course of the 24 season, where I think that Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris could each have 160 or 170 carries and each have 700 or 800 rushing yards along with 6 or 7 rushing touchdowns apiece. Maybe even one of the players has double-digit rushing touchdowns. Having each player be as fresh as they can in the fourth quarter is going to really wear teams down whenever it's a 20-17 game. They know they need to make a stop in the run game to get the ball back, but guess what? We have Omarion Hampton on 11 carries in the fourth quarter because Najee Harris currently has 14 carries, and we're just going to feed Omarion Hampton the rock. You know we're going to feed Omarion Hampton the rock. Go ahead and try and stop us. And by the way, we have a 360-pound right guard that we can just say Omarion, run right behind him, as well as Joe Alt right next to Mekhi Becton, and what I would say to the defense in that situation is good luck. Obviously, we know the Chargers are going to try and pound the rock. Everyone knows they're going to try and pound the rock, and the steps that they took this offseason to really get better at running the football, to me, were all very beneficial in terms of who this team is going to be, not just in 2025, but beyond 2025. The 2025 Chargers receiving / tight end room starts with Ladd McConkey, who had over 1,100 yards in his rookie season, and barring injury, of course, I don't think there's any reason to think that he wouldn't have over 1,000 yards in 2025. He's a really good receiver, he has great hands, he knows how to win, and we saw the chemistry between him and Justin Herbert all throughout the 2024 season. But after Ladd McConkey is where it gets really interesting, specifically with third-year player Quentin Johnston. QJ was a first-round pick back in 2023, and unfortunately for him at this point, he's probably more known for timely drops than anything, and I don't think QJ's work in 2024 was all that impressive outside of one game against the Raiders in Week 18, whose corners were not good, and a big 60-plus yard touchdown that he had against Cleveland. Outside of those couple of scenarios there, it was a lot of 3 for 27, 2 for 44, 4 for 50, those types of games from Quentin Johnston all throughout the 2024 season. Now, I will at least acknowledge that he did improve from 23 to 24, but I really do think by season's end in 2025 that 2025 second-round pick Trey Harris is going to be the definitive wide receiver too. I also think there's going to be much more of an emphasis on running the football this year than last, and the Chargers had 3 players have 50 receptions or more in 2024, and I don't know if that's going to be the case in 2025. I do think there's a very real scenario where Ladd has over 100 receptions, and that Trey Harris has maybe 55 to 60 receptions, but after that, between Tyler Conklin, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston, it's going to be a battle for who finishes third on this roster in receptions, and ultimately I do think Tyler Conklin will beat out Will Dissly. I think he's an underrated route runner, and I think he's going to be a guy that Jim Harbaugh loves, and Tyler Conklin has kind of an iconic route where he has a shake underneath, and he's won in the NFL with that specific route over the past 5 years consistently, so for Justin Herbert to be able to find Tyler Conklin routinely underneath, I think he will be a guy that Chargers fans come to love over the course of the season. What really worries me about the 2025 Chargers season and their team ceiling, and why I have their ceiling as a divisional round exit, is because of the end of their schedule. The final 4 games for the Chargers in 2025, and really final 5, are home against the Eagles, at Kansas City, at Dallas, versus the Texans, and at Denver, and that in a lot of ways is more than a playoff schedule, because even if they were a wildcard team, they'd only have 4 playoff games. That's a 5-game playoff schedule right before the playoffs start, and for anyone, let alone a team who I do not think will win the division, is an insanely difficult schedule right before the big dance starts. So I hope that the Chargers can win a playoff game, maybe even 2 this year, but I really don't think that this is going to be the year, and that I think 2025 is still more of a build-up for what this team is going to be in 26 and beyond. But one thing is for sure with the 2025 Chargers, it's that they are going to be an incredibly difficult team to beat, and that they are never going to back down from anyone. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel as we are closing in at 200,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.